Welcome back to Notary Knowledge. I'm your host, Eddie, and today we're going back in time. Now, for today's show, we are doing something special. We're opening up the Notary Knowledge Vault and bringing back a crucial conversation from way back in the past. Whether you're a newer listener who missed this one the first time around, or a seasoned signing agent who could use a rock-solid refresher on the fundamentals, this audio is packed with value you can apply to your business right now. So, let's jump into the Throwback Machine. Remember, good enough is not a thing. Enjoy the show.
Are you looking for an edge, flexible income, and immediate professional respect? Discover the hidden opportunity of becoming a public official with the book, Becoming a Notary by Derek Spruill. This beginner's guide provides the universal roadmap to launch your new career. You will learn the core mission of deterring fraud, the essential tools of the trade, and exactly how to protect yourself while building a respected business. Get your copy of Becoming a Notary on Amazon, and step into a rewarding profession.
Welcome to Notary Knowledge, the broadcast dedicated to propelling you, the certified professional, into the role of strategic expert in the world of authenticated documents.
And thank you for joining us. For all of you seasoned notaries tuning in, today's discussion is, well, it's essential.
It really is. We're taking a step beyond the simple seal and the journal entry.
We're focusing on the document's journey after you've done your part, specifically when that document is headed for a foreign country.
Right.
And this is where that foundational knowledge you have meets international law. It connects the simple act of witnessing a signature to these incredible complex processes of sovereign trust across borders.
That's a perfect way to put it. For the experienced notary handling these big international transactions, global corporate deals, adoptions, real estate, your mission goes way past just checking an ID.
Much further.
So we are diving into the key operational differences. We're talking about the simplicity of an apostille versus the procedural minefield of full consular legalization.
And we'll also revisit some of those contentious debates around foreign identification.
Yes, and how you, the advanced notary, have to be the one to spot the major red flags that could just derail a whole transaction.
For you, the advanced practitioner, these cross-border documents are really the ultimate stress test of your training.
Mm-hmm.
Understanding the final destination of that document and what's legally required there is the difference between a successful transaction and, well, catastrophic rejection.
So we need to make sure that bedrock of knowledge is absolutely solid before we start building on it.
Exactly.
So let's start right there at the foundation, the notary's core duties. When a document is destined for, say, a merger in Dubai or a real estate deal in Vietnam, does your initial function as a notary change at all?
Not one bit. And that's the most important thing to remember. The core function is non-negotiable, and it's very narrowly defined no matter where that piece of paper is going.
So you're still just the impartial witness.
Strictly an impartial witness to the signing. Your job is not to validate the document's content or its fairness or its legality. Your duties are all about the signer.
The big three.
Verifying their identity, confirming they're willing to sign, and of course, assessing their mental capacity to do so. That's it.
And that's a crucial reminder. We've talked before about that line between signer integrity versus document integrity. But why does that focus on the signer become so much more important when the document's heading to a foreign country? One that might have a broader idea of what a notary does.
Well, think about it. When a foreign government or court sees a document with your seal on it, they are granting implicit trust.
They're trusting the seal.
They're trusting that you, as a state-appointed official, meticulously checked those three foundational things. If your notarization is flawed, if the ID wasn't checked properly or the signer was coerced, the whole international transaction can fail right there.
Wow.
The integrity is compromised from the start, and no amount of legalization later can fix a bad notarization. It's really a point of no return.
And if flawless execution is the goal, then maybe the most important duty, especially at this level, is the duty to say no.
That's it. Recognizing when you're about to commit the unauthorized practice of law, or UPL, that decision to refuse is often the most important one you'll make.
We have to keep reinforcing that boundary, don't we?
Constantly. You can't advise on, interpret, or prepare legal documents unless you're also a licensed attorney. When you're looking at some complex international document, your involvement with the substance of it has to be almost zero.
Okay, so let's get practical. That complex document is in front of you. It's in English, but it's referencing foreign laws, foreign assets.
Yeah.
What are you actually scanning it for if you can't read and interpret it?
You are scanning it for two things, and two things only. First, for completeness. You're making sure there are no dangerous blank spaces that someone could fill in fraudulently after it leaves your site. And second, you're scanning it to get the info you need for your journal. The document's title, the date, the type of notarial act. That's it. Reading it out loud, offering an opinion, that's completely prohibited.
So let's talk about the sharp edges of UPL. What's the biggest, most common mistake a notary makes, even a seasoned one, when they're just trying to be helpful?
It almost always comes from trying to solve the client's uncertainty. They're unsure about what a foreign government needs.
So they ask something like, is this the right power of attorney form for my country?
Exactly that. Or, if I sign this part, am I on the hook for foreign taxes? The second you try to answer that, you're practicing law without a license.
So what's the move?
You have to pivot immediately. You redirect them to a licensed attorney or a consular official. The moment you offer an interpretation or pick a form for them, you are crossing into a serious, commission-threatening offense.
That clarity is just vital. Okay, let's shift that idea of identity verification to the challenges of foreign ID. Specifically, the case study of the matricula consular. This was a huge flashpoint for notaries, wasn't it?
It was, and it's still the textbook example of, regulatory concerns colliding with real-world market demand.
And just for a quick refresher, the matricula consular is what exactly?
It's an identification card issued by the Mexican government to its citizens who are living abroad. For a while there, in the mid-2000s, the debate was fierce over whether it was reliable enough for notarizations or for opening a bank account.
Okay, so let's start with the argument against it. Organizations like the National Notary Association were raising concerns. What were they?
The primary argument was about the security and reliability of the card itself. There was some U.S. government research from 2003 that pointed to potential vulnerabilities.
In the card's features.
Not just that, the deeper concern was about the supporting documents used to get the matricula in the first place.
Ah, so the documents behind the document.
Exactly. If the birth certificate or proof of residency used to apply for the card were easily forged, then the matricula itself, no matter how high-tech, was based on a potentially fraudulent identity.
A weak link in the chain of trust. So how did supporters push back against that?
They pointed to the huge procedural and tech upgrades the Mexican government made after 2002. They argued that these security improvements brought the card up to a standard of reliability found in other IDs that were already accepted.
And they also pointed to the necessity, I imagine.
A massive real-world necessity. You had millions of people who needed this ID to access vital services that required notarized paperwork.
So what were some of those specific security upgrades?
They were significant. By 2007, they were replacing all the older cards with a much more secure version called MCS. They built a national database, which was critical.
So they could check for duplicates?
Duplicates, homonyms where people have the same name, all of that. And crucially, consulates started checking every applicant against a government stop list with about 13,000 records.
Oh.
And the cards themselves got cutting-edge features, holograms, embedded designs, sophisticated printing, very similar to what you'd see on high-security U.S. documents.
That's a huge investment. But even so, that concern about the initial documents remained a sticking point for some. How did the market deal with that risk?
Well, it came down to practice and risk assessment, especially in the financial sector. The banks, driven by the need to serve a large population, they started moving toward acceptance.
So they basically tested the waters.
They did. One survey of financial institutions showed a clear trend. A major player like Wells Fargo had opened over 750,000 accounts nationwide using the matricula since 2001.
And what's the key takeaway from that? If some were raising security flags, how did these huge banks get comfortable with it?
The key insight was that accepting the card didn't seem to trigger additional regulatory scrutiny for them. The market essentially tested the legal landscape. If the heavily regulated financial markets found the updated card reliable enough, it showed a shift in how these foreign IDs were viewed in practice.
So for the notary today, the lesson is what?
The lesson is to be keenly aware of which foreign IDs your state currently accepts, and to recognize that the security features of those documents and the rules around them are constantly evolving.
Okay, that sets a high bar for domestic duties.
Yeah.
But once that ID check is perfect, the notarization is complete. The document leaves the U.S.
And this is where we shift entirely. We're moving from the world of notarization into the global ecosystem of authentication.
This is where we get into apostille versus legalization.
And this is where the advanced notary really proves their strategic value. You have to constantly remind your clients that your U.S. state notarization is a domestic act.
Right, it's only valid here.
Exactly. Once it crosses a border, it needs a higher level of validation so that the foreign authority trusts the legitimacy of your state commission.
Okay, let's start with the preferred path.
Yeah.
The simplified one, apostille certification.
The Apostille, it's Apostille, is an international authentication certificate. It was established by the Hague Convention of 1961.
And the whole point of that treaty was to
Yeah,
cut through the red tape.
precisely. To simplify global commerce by getting rid of the lengthy, expensive, multi-step authentication that used to be required.
So if your document is going to one of the, over 120 countries that signed on?
Yes, major players like Germany, India, Brazil, Mexico, Russia, South Africa. If it's going to any of them, a single apostille certificate is all you need.
The ultimate global shortcut. But let's be clear about what it's certifying. It's not certifying that the document's content is true, is it?
Absolutely not. The apostille only verifies the origin of the document.
Meaning?
It verifies three things for the foreign recipient. One, that the signature of the public official, that's you, the notary, is authentic. Two, the capacity in which you acted, that you are a commissioned notary. And three, that the seal or stamp on the document is genuine.
So it's verifying my commission, not the contract.
You got it.
And this next point is critical for notaries. We initiate the process, but we do not issue the apostille ourselves.
A very strict boundary. You are explicitly prohibited from issuing it. It's issued after your perfect notarization by the competent authority in your state.
Which is usually the Secretary of State's office.
Or the Lieutenant Governor's office, or whoever regulates notaries in your jurisdiction. Your role ends with the flawless notarial act. The apostille process begins right after that.
Okay, so that's the simple path. Now the alternative. Document legalization for all the non-Hague nations.
The procedural minefield, as you called it. This is the multi-step, multi-agency process for countries that are not part of the Hague Convention.
So since they didn't sign the treaty, they don't accept the standardized apostille.
Correct. They require a much more robust, multi-layered chain of verification to satisfy their own sovereign requirements.
So instead of one certificate, the document needs several.
Several layered authentication certificates issued by different levels of government. It's a full diplomatic handshake, verified at every single stage.
Why does this distinction, Hague or non-Hague, matter so much beyond just the extra steps?
Because it is the first and most crucial piece of information. It dictates the entire strategy, the cost, and the timeline for your client.
So if it's a Hague country, it's predictable, relatively fast.
Right. But if it's a non-Hague country, they are facing a process that is lengthy, it involves multiple substantial fees at every level, and is incredibly sensitive to delays and rejection.
And your knowledge of that difference directly impacts their project.
It could be the difference between success and catastrophic failure. The moment the client tells you the destination country, you have to start thinking about this entire subsequent chain.
Okay, we've set the stage. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll walk through that entire multi-step legalization marathon for non-Hague nations.
Sounds good.
We've established the two paths. Now let's focus on the complexity of that full legalization procedure for non-Hague nations. For countries like Algeria, Nigeria, the UAE, notarization is just the first step in a very long marathon.
It is.
What happens if someone breaks the chronological order of these steps?
The entire process fails. The document gets instantly rejected, and the client often has to start over from scratch. That's why the order is so critical.
A required four-step chain.
And it must be followed in exact order, because each authority is only verifying the signature and seal of the one that came directly before it.
Okay, let's walk through that chain step by step.
Step 1 is the notary public. That's you. You notarize the signature of the person signing the document. You authenticate their identity and their willingness.
The foundation.
Yeah.
Then, step 2, it goes to the state level.
Right, to your state's competent authority, usually the Secretary of State. They perform the state-level authentication, and they're not verifying the signer. They're verifying the validity of your commission and seal. They're authenticating the notary.
Okay, so the state is vouching for me. What's step 3, the federal level?
The document then goes to the federal level, specifically the U.S. Department of State's Office of Authentications in Washington, D.C.
And what do they do?
They are performing the federal authentication. They aren't verifying you, the notary. They are verifying the signature and seal of the state-level official from step 2,
So it's the government vouching for the government.
moving the trust right up the sovereign chain.
And that brings us to the final step.
Step 4 is the consular level. The document, now with state and federal seals, must be submitted to the embassy or consulate of the destination country.
The foreign government itself.
Yes. They review the whole chain, and if they're satisfied, they affix their final legalization or attestation stamp. Only then is the document considered legally valid for use in that non-Hague country.
That is an incredible amount of bureaucracy. What kinds of high-stakes documents typically have to run this gauntlet?
We mostly see it with documents for global commerce and major life events, things like articles of incorporation, commercial invoices, certificates of origin.
So export documents.
Exactly, or specialized quality certificates like ISO or CE certs. If a U.S. company is setting up a branch or exporting goods to a non-Hague nation, their documents have to go through this.
Let's use our sources to look at some of the specific demands. For instance, commercial documents going to a country like Pakistan.
Pakistan is a great example of complexity that happens before the U.S. chain even starts.
How so?
For commercial documents like a free sale certificate or an invoice, they often need a layer of specialized pre-attestation. Specifically, they have to be countersigned by the local Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the CCI.
So a trade body has to sign off first.
Right. They're verifying the legitimacy of the business operation. Once the CCI attests, then the document can move up the chain to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So the client has to get trade body verification before they even see a notary.
And vital records like divorce papers are just as complex, right?
Oh, absolutely. For divorce papers, for example, they might have to be issued by a specific local council. And if the people are overseas, they can't just mail in a power of attorney.
Why not?
The rules often say a blood relative can only represent them if that power of attorney was attested by a Pakistan embassy or consulate abroad.
And for, say, a death certificate of a foreigner,
The receiving government might require a formal note verbal from the deceased's embassy.
wait, stop there. A note verbal. That sounds like specific diplomatic jargon. What is that?
It is. A note verbal is a formal, unsigned diplomatic communication. It's how one government officially communicates facts to another.
So it's a government-to-government note.
Exactly. And when a document requires one, that's a huge red flag for you. It means the process has moved entirely out of the private realm and into high-level state-to-state diplomacy. Your client is entering an area way beyond our control.
That really changes the kind of advice you have to give. What about translations? If a document needs to be translated for the foreign embassy, what is the notary's precise role?
This is a critical point where UPL violations happen all the time. A U.S. notary cannot certify the accuracy of the translation itself.
Because you're not a certified translator.
Correct. But what you can do is notarize the translator's signature on an accompanying affidavit.
An affidavit of accuracy.
Yes. A sworn statement where the translator says they are fluent in both languages and that the translation is accurate and complete. That affidavit, with the notarized signature, then becomes part of the whole legalization chain.
Okay, let's look at a couple of other non-Hague jurisdictions. What about Algeria?
Documents for Algeria have to follow that chronological chain to the letter. Notarization, then state authentication, then U.S. Department of State authentication. Only then can it go to the Algerian embassy in D.C.
And what's the key detail there?
The cost. The embassy charges a non-refundable fee per document. So if your client has a package of 10 documents, that's 10 separate substantial fees.
It adds up fast. Now, what about the UAE? It has a reputation for being a very bureaucratic environment.
It does. And as a non-Hague country, they require attestation for almost everything. They have made some changes recently to try and streamline things, but it adds new complexity.
Such as?
As of 2023, personal and educational records, diplomas, transcripts were moved over to VFS Global, which is a private handling agency.
So it's not even going to the embassy directly.
Not for those documents. It shifts the process into a private, fee-based service model. So you have to advise your client to budget for public sector fees at the state and federal level, plus private agency fees, plus courier costs.
And for commercial documents in the UAE.
They've moved some of that online. Commercial invoices and shipping documents now have to be processed through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs digital portal.
So the landscape is constantly shifting. You have to stay on top of it.
You do. It can shift from physical submission to digital portals or third-party processors.
Okay, last one. What are the requirements for commercial legalization in Nigeria?
Nigeria is a good example of needing specific government documents before you even get to the notarization. The package is extensive.
What's in it?
An application on the company's official letterhead. And crucially, the company has to provide certificates of free sale from both their state and the federal government.
A certificate of free sale. What does that do?
It's a document certifying that the products are freely sold in the United States, so they meet U.S. regulatory standards and are safe for export.
So another bureaucratic layer before you even see the document.
Exactly. And the Nigerian embassy requires 2 full sets of documents, an original and a copy, and the fees are often per product. Any mistake, and the whole shipment could be delayed indefinitely.
So if you connect all of these specific demands together, what's the single most important piece of advice you can give a client about timelines for this whole legalization marathon?
Start immediately. It is inherently unavoidably slow. The timeline can stretch from a few days to several weeks or even months if there's an error.
So you have to advise them to budget for delays and multiple layered fees.
And to prioritize submission the second your perfect notarization is done. It's the only way to mitigate the risk of failure due to delay.
Okay, that was an exhaustive look at the chain. But we need to go back to a point you made earlier. Sometimes the best move for a notary isn't to notarize at all.
Yes. It's to redirect the client entirely. This is about identifying those jurisdictional red flags.
And what defines an expert notary is not just knowing how to notarize, but knowing what their commission can't do.
Exactly. We operate in a common law tradition where the notary has limited ministerial power. Many foreign countries operate under civil law where their notaries have much broader authority, almost like a judge.
And when a document requires a legal act that the foreign country considers an authentic act,
Our U.S. notarization, even with the full legalization chain, can be deemed insufficient or completely invalid.
So let's detail some of these high-stakes, embassy-only documents. Where is a U.S. notarization often rejected outright?
High-stakes powers of attorney involving real estate and critical declarations of personal status. Those are the big ones.
So take the example from the source material. A unilateral real estate power of attorney for use by an overseas citizen of Vietnam.
Right. Vietnamese law often mandates that the person must appear and execute that document directly before a Vietnamese diplomatic mission, their embassy or consulate.
A U.S. notary shouldn't even touch it.
They should not, because the foreign law requires its own sovereign official to witness the signing.
So the U.S. notarization is rejected because the foreign government requires personal appearance before their own official. What's another common example?
The affidavit of single status, sometimes called a free to marry affidavit. It's required for marriage in certain non-Hague countries like the UAE.
And the rule there is?
The UAE often mandates that this affidavit be notarized directly at the U.S. embassy or consulate by a foreign service officer.
And the thinking there is what?
To ensure the absolute maximum level of sovereign authentication for a personal status declaration that's going to be used to create a legal marriage abroad. If a client brings you one of those, your best service is to immediately send them to the nearest U.S. embassy.
That knowledge right there is the mark of a specialist. It saves the client weeks of wasted time and a lot of money.
It does.
So let's flip the scenario. Your client is already overseas and needs a document notarized for use back here in the U.S. What are their options?
They have 3 main options. First and best is to visit a U.S. embassy or consulate. The foreign service officers there can perform notarial services that are identical to a U.S. notary's, and their seal is instantly recognized back home.
The most direct and reliable path. But what if the embassy is too far away or has a huge wait time?
Then they can use a local foreign notary in that country. But, and this is a big but, you have to counsel the client that for that foreign notarization to be accepted in the U.S., it then has to go through the full apostille or legalization process in that foreign country before it comes back.
So that adds time and expense. And the third option, using technology.
The third and increasingly popular option is remote online notarization, or ARN. This can be a great option, but 2 conditions have to be met.
Which are?
1, you, the notary, have to be commissioned in a state that allows you to notarize for signers located abroad. And 2, the receiving agency back in the U.S., the title company, the county recorder, has to accept the remote notarization.
Okay, so since that flawless notarization is the first step, a lot of experienced notaries expand their business by becoming an apostille agent. How does that role work?
It shifts your focus from the legal act of notarizing to a logistical concierge-style service. The agent provides huge value by helping the customer with all the complicated, time-consuming steps that come after the notarization. You manage the marathon for them.
So what are the main functions of that agent role?
You're basically a sophisticated courier service. You handle the secure delivery of the document, the request forms, the fees, all of it. This is vital for clients with urgent cases or big batches of corporate documents.
And just as important, you're managing their expectations.
Exactly. You manage expectations on processing times, which can vary wildly from days to weeks, depending on the backlogs.
And what about mitigating the biggest risk of all?
Right.
Rejection.
That's where the agent's expertise is key. Rejection happens because of improper notarization, missing info, procedural flaws. A good agent meticulously verifies everything before sending the package, which dramatically reduces the chance of a rejection that could cost the client weeks.
And that level of operational expertise is what justifies a premium consultant level fee.
It absolutely does.
Okay, we're going to take a final break. When we return, we'll discuss the fundamental difference between legal systems that causes all this complexity in the first place.
See you in a moment.
All right, in this final section, we are shifting our focus to the conceptual differences between legal systems. This is really the key to why global authentication is so complex.
It is.
We've said that the U.S. notary, under common law, is just an impartial witness. How does that contrast with the civil law notary system?
The contrast is truly foundational. In our common law system, the notary is ministerial. They only certify identity and signature. But the civil law notary, who you find across Europe, Latin America, and much of the world, is a public officer who functions more like an attorney or a magistrate.
So they're not just a witness.
Not at all. They advise clients, they prepare the legal instruments themselves, and they oversee the whole execution. In doing so, they give the document the status of an authentic act.
And that authentic act status is the key legal difference.
It is. It fundamentally changes the burden of proof. An authentic act from a civil law notary carries immediate legal weight. It's often executable in their courts, almost like a court order.
So it bypasses a lot of the verification that a U.S. document needs.
It does. A civil law notary can oversee a real estate deed for a foreign property, and that gives it instant familiarity and reliability in that country.
So the whole reason our four-step legalization chain exists is to try and compensate for the fact that our notary only certified the signature.
That's it. We have to build up that trust layer by layer, whereas their system has it built in from the start.
So for the strategic U.S. notary, how should you use this knowledge to advise a client?
You use it to advise them on the safest path. If a client is doing a major deal in a civil law country buying property, for instance, you have to explain the risk.
Which is that a U.S. notarized power of attorney, even with a full apostille or legalization, might still be challenged in a foreign court.
Right. Because the U.S. notary didn't advise on its legality or the signer's capacity. The safer strategic advice might be to tell the client to find a qualified civil law notary in the destination country, or use that country's embassy service.
So you create the document as an authentic act from day one.
And you minimize the risk of rejection.
Let's apply this to a specific complex transaction. Powers of attorney for non-resident Indians managing property back home.
An excellent detailed example. These international real estate deals for NRIs rely heavily on a POA to manage all the formalities, and the home country demands a very specific high level of authentication.
What are the non-negotiable steps for one of these overseas POAs?
Well, first, the document often has to be prepared on government-mandated stamp paper, and it needs specific things like passport photos of everyone signing.
And the execution itself.
That's the critical step. The POA must typically be signed by the NRI in the presence of an official at their home country's embassy or consulate where they currently live. That attestation by their own diplomatic mission is what gives the document its legal standing back home.
So this goes right back to that embassy-only red flag. For high-stakes property matters, the foreign government wants one of its own officials to witness the act.
Exactly. And your job as a U.S. notary is to recognize that requirement and redirect the client, not to attempt a notarization that's just going to get rejected at the consulate.
And the service becomes one of jurisdictional clarity.
Yes. You're the consultant who can identify whether they need to start with a U.S. notary in the four-step chain, or whether the foreign law says they need to skip you entirely and go straight to their own nation's diplomatic mission.
And that really brings us to the summary for today.
It does. The strategic imperative for the experienced notary listening is that this international landscape demands that you are more than just an impeccable witness. You have to be a jurisdictional and procedural consultant.
Your ability to spot those red flags, like a document that has to be done before a foreign service officer, that saves your client huge delays and protects your own commission.
Exactly right.
And that depth of knowledge is really your ultimate value proposition. If you connect this to the bigger picture, the integrity of your single signature starts a chain that eventually determines whether a multi-million-dollar business can be established or a family can complete an adoption abroad.
Your attention to detail is truly the insurance policy for global commerce.
It proves that every single notarization is a link in this grand chain of international law and sovereign trust.
Absolutely.
And that leads us to our final provocative thought for you to consider. The Hague Convention simplified things for over 120 countries, replacing that long chain with a single certificate.
A huge step forward.
But as digital authentication systems evolve so rapidly, we've seen countries like the UAE shifting to digital portals for commercial documents. Will that multi-step physical legalization process for non-Hague nations eventually be replaced by a new, purely digital global standard?
That's a great question.
What technological shifts are already challenging the fundamental need for physical seals, ink signatures, and layers of embassies for attestation? And how will you, the notary, adapt to a fully digital global identity system?
We'd encourage you to follow the legal technology movements because the world of document authentication is definitely poised for its next major evolution.
Food for thought indeed. Thank you for joining us for this broadcast of Notary Knowledge. We'll see you next time.
Need a blueprint to start your mobile notary business? Don't stumble through the process. You need an outline for success. Introducing the Mobile Notary Blueprint by Derek Spruill. Build your thriving mobile business and protect yourself from costly mistakes with expert advice. Buy your copy of the Mobile Notary Blueprint by Derek Spruill from any online bookstore, Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble Bookstore, booksofmillion.com, bookshop.org, Mobile Notary by DerekSpruill.com, or download from Kindle and build your successful notary business today.